So our reading this morning for the sermon is taken from Matthew chapter 16. Jesus began to show the disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering at the hands of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took Jesus aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "God forbid it, Lord, this must never happen to you." But Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan, you are a stumbling block to me, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." Okay. So the theme for our sermon this morning is the fear of change. And this is a really great passage because it really teaches so much. This is why I think the Gospels contain that mysterious element that's so transformative compared to a lot of the other parts of the Bible that we don't really focus on. That we get to see Jesus is telling the apostles, like, here's what's going to happen. And Peter, who we know is one of the apostles who loves Jesus and will, even declares that he'll do anything for him, even going to his death. And yet it's like he's going, "Come here for a second. Can you just come here for a second?" He pulls him aside and he rebukes him. What does that mean, to rebuke? It's not a word we use a lot anymore, but it's kind of like he's almost chastising him, like, don't say such ridiculous things. We'll take care of it. And probably he was expecting Jesus to be like, "Oh, good, well, finally, someone's going to help me out here." And instead, he comes down on him pretty hard, It's one of those lines in the Bible that probably people go like, "Man, that's really harsh. Like, he's a friend, he's trying to help him, and you're going, 'Get behind me, Satan.'" So there's an element to how this whole life in God works that is very jarring until something inside has been opened, something has changed. And at this point, clearly it hasn't happened for Peter. Jesus is going to have to go through something. He's going to be turned over, arrested, beaten, spat upon, flogged, and then, executed, which he knows. And if you can tune into the energy of it, he's not all worried and nervous, but I would have to imagine he's not like crazy looking forward to it. I would imagine, because there's a point, remember, when on the night of the Last Supper where he goes, "God, let this cup pass from me." In other words, something is going on here and I would rather not have to do it. However, I don't want to get in the way. But to me, that's a really beautiful moment of him going, yeah, like, I'm having a lot of feelings about this, but I'm not going to abandon what I agreed to do. So let me just ask one more time. If I have to do this, I'll do it. But if there's any way that I don't have to. So two things that are happening. One is Jesus at first goes like, yeah, I know that this is going to happen. But don't forget, he says, "And after the third day I will be raised." Somehow Peter probably doesn't hear that part. And he wants to correct Jesus and go like, don't speak such foolishness. Now, you might wonder, well, why do these incidences have to occur that are so disruptive, so difficult? Wouldn't there be a way for God to complete Jesus' mission without him having to be arrested and betrayed and flogged and then executed? That's what the mind wants to do. The mind wants to find fault with God and say, like, there's got to be a way to do this to avoid all the pain. Well, it appears there isn't. And there's a place where you get to where you actually accept that how things work, especially when you are in union with God or you want to live in union with God, that is not how we would want them to go. It's just how it works. And as most of you are probably aware, and I really appreciate what you were sharing, Serena, which is we go through these incredibly disruptive times while the mind is resisting the change that is about to occur. And so then if that never gets addressed, we develop the fear of change because we always associate change with this tremendous disruption and discomfort. And we forget that there will be some sort of peace and there will be some sort of resolution at the conclusion of the change. And this culture, I'm talking about the global culture, is kind of obsessed with feeling good and getting our way and everything going how we want it to. So we don't often develop the skills to be able to go through the difficult, things that precede that transformation. I think about sometimes walking into the ocean. And let's say the water is it's fresh, but it's a little bit chilly. When your feet touch, it's really not that jarring, but it's kind of this is going to be jarring when it gets to about here, right? It's like my calves, not a big deal. It's a little bit on the legs, but then when I get around this area, there's a sort of a, oh Lord, and then finally getting the shoulders in and getting your head in, And then miraculously, within about 3 minutes, there's a total adjustment. And it's just like nothing. At least for me, it's like I'm swimming in the water and but that adjustment period is kind of uncomfortable and jarring. I don't want you to fear the changes that are inevitable if you decide to choose a life in God. I want you to learn that surrendering to that fear is going to emphasize and prolong the disruption and the agony of it. Because, the thing has not yet occurred. Imagine Jesus going, if he was not transformed, he's like, oh my God, this thing's going to happen. And every day he's going did I tell you that I'm going to get flogged? And then I'm going to get, can you imagine somebody driving nails into your hand? Oh my God, I'm going to hang on the cross. That would be, I don't know how to describe it. It would just be like adding to the torture of it. And some people have this fear that God has a plan for my life, and if it's anything like Jesus', I don't know if I want to do it. And what's been really cool for me in this pathway to reaching, the ordination and everything yesterday, is that I have a much better understanding of this idea of God's plan. And I want to liberate you because I really feel like it makes so much more sense to me. God's plan is that you live a life that is pleasing to God. I really think it's that simple. Which means if you just want to, basically live a good moral life and not harm other people and have a family and kids and focus on your family and kids, but you live within the parameters that God says, how you are doing that, the wife, the kids, the husband, the kids, the career, you're doing it in an honest, moral way, then we could say that's God's plan for you because your life is pleasing to God. You're not out there, manipulating people and using people and lying because, everybody's kind of lying and deceiving. And if that's as much of the transformation that you want, that's okay. Let's say you go no, I really want to know the presence of God within. Well, that would be very pleasing to God. In order to get there, whatever is preventing that has to be broken apart. And we accept that. You want more God, so we've got to find out what's in the way of the next layer of that connection. And I can assure you that those changes, some of those changes are going to be irritating, disruptive, unsettling, angering. Because we like things familiar. We like things to be I know how it's going to go and it's comfortable. But in order to get to that new level of peace and that new level of connection, we have to anticipate there's going to be some disruption. And again, you have to decide to what degree you want to keep going. Because if you want to keep going, you're going to have to accept that some parts of you that are in place now are going to have to die. Mostly, I want to focus on what both Serena said and what Jesus said in the reading, which is you're focusing your mind on human things. Your mind is seeing in a very limited way Okay, to be fair, based on the experience and how you've lived, yes, it makes sense that you now think that way because you have a lot of experiences that validate that. And along comes somebody who knows a little bit more because they have been brought through the process and goes, that is not reality. That is the reality that you believe in, and therefore it creates a limitation as far as the realities that you could experience. But the reality of God is way more expansive than that. And everybody goes, well, I want that. I go like, okay, if you want that, you have to be prepared to let go of the thing that is preventing that. Okay, I want to do that. Okay, so that's going to be a change. And remember that change involves some discomfort and potentially some pain. What's painful is when we go like, oh my God, I've been thinking this way the whole time, and now I realize it's parts of it are not right, and the pride goes like, what a fool I've been for thinking this way. Oh my God, all the wasted time. Or, why didn't anybody tell me? I can't believe how angry I am. They told me that this was the way to be. And all of that stuff is normal. That's all of the stuff that has to be discarded. And part of us are attached to it. So here comes change because we want it, and then we go, okay, I've got to get I'm in the water up to here and it's cold, and part of me is going like, you know what, that might be enough. But another part of me goes like, no, I want to get in, and I want to get to the point where I'm comfortable in the water, and I want to enjoy swimming in the water. Okay, well then, at some point, you're going to have to just dive in and deal with the pain of that. I mean, that's really not that painful compared to, getting nails driven through your flesh, but for us in that moment, it is. It's painful. So I just want to leave you with that. I want to leave you with, our small group here is dedicated to transformation. If we get fellowship in our church, I think that's a bonus. If we get, a good social community, that's a bonus. If you enjoy the singing and you like the worship and all that, I think that's a bonus. But the primary mission of this church is we want to change. We want to approach the truest version of ourselves and then see what life looks like. And so we're going to have to anticipate difficulties as we hit certain, new opportunities for change. And I imagine all of you guys are familiar with that to a certain degree, and I can tell you that that does not change. As you keep going, that element is always part of it. But what does change is the resistance to it. Much less resistance. There might be that, right, I forgot, here comes disruption, discomfort, irritation, anger, whatever. That's going to pass, and then we will be in the new way of thinking and being. We'll have greater clarity, and we'll have, it's like we're now used to the new temperature of the water.